Sometimes great movies and TV shows slip through the cracks of pop culture awareness or widespread acclaim, and the sci-fi genre is no stranger to this. Revolutionary new shows are cancelled before their time, brilliant and bold movies are misjudged when they're released, or even entire franchises remain hidden due to their geographical origin. But today I want to talk about a sci-fi show which was successful in its day, was met with critical acclaim, and cultivated a modest fan base, and yet for some reason, almost nobody talks about it these days. I refer you to the 2008 sci-fi series Fringe. Created by the trio of J.J. Abrams, Alex Kurtzman, and Roberto Orci, Fringe follows FBI agent Olivia Dunham, who teams up with a former mad scientist and his estranged son to investigate paranormal events and bizarre sci-fi occurrences. Now, it takes about half a second of a glance to see how heavily Fringe is inspired by the likes of the X-Files, which is really to be expected of this era of TV. I've outlined in previous video essays how the mid to late 2000s saw a massive decrease in space opera style TV shows. Star Trek had died a slow death on TV, Stargate's third incarnation was cancelled before its time, and many others were either coming to an end or had vanished from pop culture. Instead, the success of the X-Files resulted in shows like Warehouse 13, Threshold, and the 4400. Casts of mostly good-looking actors prowling the streets of Vancouver in grey and black coats, engaging in procedural drama, while getting caught up in just as much angst as they do sci-fi weirdness. But in my personal opinion, Fringe stands above all of these shows, and even surpassed its primary inspiration in terms of storytelling quality. However, before we get into the ins and outs of Fringe's larger series arc, we have to dive into the fantastic trio that make up the main cast. Anna Torv takes on the role of the initial protagonist as Agent Olivia Dunham. It is a crime Anna Torv didn't become a bigger star on TV following Fringe, because she should have had the lead roles of dozens of other shows thrown at her. Dunham's role as an FBI agent gives her an almost James Bond style swagger, looking right at home handling guns and throwing down with bad guys, acting decisively and smartly while pursuing a case, no matter how strange. And yet at the same time, thanks to the nature of the writing behind the character, Dunham is also incredibly relatable and likeable. Joshua Jackson takes on the supporting role of Peter Bishop, serving as the rogue of the show. Being outside of law enforcement with a checkered past, he's the perfect counterweight to the more stringent and professional Olivia Dunham. While he has a brilliant mind, Peter isn't the typical nerd, but instead is presented as a suave cynic. Peter Bishop, on paper at least, is actually a massive bore, being the most skeptical, the most confrontational, and sometimes quite difficult to trust. However, Jackson's innate charisma still makes the character likeable, and is also quite capable in the action beats when need be as well. However, the absolute show stealer and de facto fan favourite is John Noble as Walter Bishop, the mad scientist and estranged father to Peter. Noble gives an absolutely magnetic performance, often acting his co-stars off the screen. Noble's performance has some commonalities with Peter Jurasik of Babylon 5 actually. An eccentric personality to make the audience laugh, only to surprise them with moments of nuance, or in Walter Bishop's case, disturb them with his warped mind. In an earlier era of the character's life, it's easy to see Walter Bishop as a potential villain in another show. The man is clearly a scientific genius, but his methodology can often be cruel, dangerous, and the results often terrifying. And yet Walter's own love of what he does means he ends up overlooking the immediate human cost of his work in favour of the wondrous potential of his experiments. While his love of ice cream and hard drugs will make people laugh or smile, there are an equal number of moments in which Walter Bishop will make you cry. He represents the strange, scary, fun and poignant heart of the show. In talking about the story of Fringe, I always end up bringing up the X-Files mainly to illustrate why Fringe is simply superior in so many ways. The X-Files, while perfectly enjoyable in its episodic stories, has become pretty stale overall. While its concept and format was quite innovative for its time, it offers little else beyond that. Remember that the X-Files is still going on, and after 11 seasons, the X-Files is still doing what it was doing in season 1. Mulder and Scully investigate paranormal sci-fi activity, while a larger conspiracy involving the US government, the cigarette-smoking man, and alien colonization unfolds in the background. It's not a bad show or anything, but after so many years, you'd expect it to have actually gone somewhere by now, or at least be heading to something. This is why Fringe ultimately surpasses The X-Files as an urban sci-fi style show, to contrast with the more outlandish space operas, and why after watching Fringe, shows like Salvation or The 4400 simply don't interest me like Fringe did. Fringe is only 5 seasons long, and honestly, the 5th season is kind of a black sheep, with season 4 ending with a perfectly suitable series conclusion. But what makes Fringe so rewarding to watch is a real sense of progress, character development, and world building. At first, the show begins in a Monster of the Week type scenario, framed by an implication of something larger going on. But while The X-Files revisited its larger alien conspiracy plot numerous times and paid off very little, Fringe's larger framing device actually had depth to it. And by the time it rolls around to seasons 3 and 4, Monster of the Week stories have pretty much entirely vanished, but that's a good thing. The strong focus on its own mythology and fictional universe means each season of Fringe is always fresh and exciting, not just in terms of plot, but character development as well. Olivia Dunham goes from a Scully-like skeptic to a dab hand in dealing with sci-fi weirdness in just the first few episodes. The will-they-won't-they romance between Olivia and Peter comes to a head in season 2. Do you know how long it took Mulder and Scully to get together? 8 seasons. 8. Friggin' House and Cuddy got together quicker than that. The point I'm driving at is that while the dynamic between the main cast and what to expect each week from a Fringe episode is already super fun and engaging, the show never becomes complacent. The characters and their relationships are always moving forward rather than standing still or being reset. The formula for a typical Fringe episode is reinvented like 3 times over the course of the series. This isn't a Babylon 5 style thing, however, where the showrunners had every detail mapped out for 5 seasons in advance. It's just great writing which builds upon the strengths of each development and each season. Now, I have been pretty vague when it comes to what the actual overarching story of Fringe even is. As this Hidden Gem series is designed to introduce people to new shows or movies, I don't want to give too much away. This is a J.J. Abrams show after all, so the mystery box is in full force here. However, while the application of the Abrams mystery box has been shown to be ill-suited to the likes of Star Trek and Star Wars, for a show like Fringe, it really works. I'll be getting into minor spoilers here, so if you want absolutely nothing given away and want to go into this show totally blind, skip to this timestamp. For those who aren't yet convinced, I won't be giving away anything massive. So here we go. The overarching story of Fringe is masterfully woven into the episodic stories of the first 2 seasons. The first season especially drops so many intriguing hints, you become addicted into finding out what the bigger picture is. Rather than this bigger picture being teased until season 5, however, we come to understand it by the middle of season 2. Walter Bishop and his former partner William Bell, played to perfection by Leonard Nimoy, discovered the means to cross dimensions. However, due to their actions, 2 parallel universes are now on a cosmic collision course, and those of the alternate reality are determined to make sure their universe is the one that survives. It's just a fucking awesome idea, and is utilised in really surprising ways. Rather than this conflict making episodes less creative and samey in dedication to the main plot, instead it revitalises the more episodic entries of the show. Teleportation, psionic superpowers, mysterious time travelers, strange devices from ancient civilizations, it all surrounds this central story. But while these individual concepts could make solid standalone episodes on their own, tying them up in the main story means the pesky network TV reset button is kept at bay, and the events of each episode have real consequences. Rather than narrowing the scope of what could happen in the next Fringe adventure, the potential is opened up even wider. Instead of some shady corporation or mad scientist being established and then done away with in the space of 45 minutes, what the Fringe team faces can have real depth. It also makes the show so much more fun to sit through, as some truly bizarre ideas are thrown into the mix, like the episode which is half animated, or when we see Walter conjure up a noir story. Fringe is a show which manages to nail the grittier urban set sci-fi, but it also manages to have the same creative world-building and colourful fun of the aforementioned space opera-style TV shows. It's the best of both worlds. That pun works on so many levels, by the way. Despite the running-in-place stagnation of the X-Files, it still enjoys a level of widespread pop culture acknowledgement, and yet Fringe was able to take inspiration from it and surpass it in virtually every way. I know Fringe has a passionate cult fanbase, and I think they'd agree more people should know about this terrific show. While it's not on a major streaming service right now as far as I know, it's totally worth seeking out and binging, and let's face it, a lot of us have time for that kind of thing. So if you're looking for something new, Fringe comes highly recommended. Simon O'Leary asks, would you like to see a reboot of Jerry Anderson's UFO or Space 1999? No, not really. Incidentally, I'm actually thinking about doing a Hidden Gem episode on Space 1999. But when it comes to reboots, I always think, would this show or movie be brought back just for the sake of bringing it back, or is there an actual point to it? For example, I understand why people would want to do a reboot of Andromeda, as that show had a great concept and cool universe, but poor execution, and a final season which completely shit the bed. Whereas talk of something like a Farscape movie is just a bad idea. The same goes for rebooting something like Space 1999, there's just no real point. The brand isn't a particularly strong or popular one, and the show doesn't really do anything better or more unique than other shows currently running. Instead of allocating resources to a Space 1999 reboot, I'd rather an original sci-fi show get made. Thank you for watching. If you like what I do and want to stay up to date on new uploads, subscribe and hit the bell icon. If you want to help the channel grow, consider joining my Patreon page where you can see videos early. Speaking of which, I'd like to quickly thank all of my patrons who are now appearing on screen. Have a good one, and as always, live long and prosper.